Well, it's been my experience as a clinician that the more serious the events that you're discussing with people, the more the language shifts towards what you might describe as the religious. So, for example, post-traumatic stress disorder, that's a good example, or cases of serious abuse, child abuse, or like truly reprehensible interactions between people. They're best conceptualized with regards to a dialogue about the nature of good and evil. And in fact, with post-traumatic stress disorder, that's actually necessary, I believe. And I should say, in keeping with that, I've had a number of war vets come up to me after my recent talks and tell me that watching my lectures has cured their post-traumatic stress disorder, because I've provided my clients with the same thing. Most people develop PTSD and other catastrophic psychological reactions when something terrible, not so much when something terrible happens to them, but when something terrible happens to them because of someone malevolent. And sometimes that malevolent person can be themselves. So soldiers, for example, often develop PTSD if they observe themselves doing something on the battlefield that they did not believe was within their realm of action. And so it's as if the archetypal adversary leapt forward out of their soul and seized them and acted for them on the battlefield. And then they're shattered by that. They can't believe that they were capable of that. That destroys their sense of what it means to be human and what being human means. And that's more likely to happen to people who are somewhat naive, I would say. Certainly that's the case with the PTSD literature. And so to treat someone in a situation like that, you have to help them develop a philosophy, I would say, but probably a theology of good and evil, because you have to investigate the structure of the motivation for malevolence. And you can't do that outside the confines of religious language, partly because this is a difficult thing to understand, and I think you have to have had contact with true evil in order to understand it. But the fundamental motivation for the most malevolent actions is actually revenge against God. And that's even the case if the people who are malevolent are atheists. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter in some sense. It doesn't even matter if God exists. It's the people who are acting malevolently act as if there is a sapient creator who is responsible for this horrible mess against whom revenge must be promulgated. And the earliest example of that is the earliest literary example of that is in the Cain and Abel story, because Cain kills Abel, who is also his ideal, kills Abel clearly to spite God, because his sacrifices were rejected. It's an unbelievably profound story, because that is exactly how people react. When their sacrifices are rejected by God, for all intents and purposes, they become bitter and resentful and look for revenge. And the more vengeful they are, the more they enter the territory of absolute good and evil rather than proximal good and evil. And it's very helpful for people who have post-traumatic stress disorder to start to understand that sort of thing, because otherwise they can't find a way out.